Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. We're a few seconds early because we were just talking about something and I just said, well, let's just do it live. And there's something I was going to do. I've put in the comments. Oh, Merry Christmas. First of all, Merry Christmas to you, viewer, wherever you might be. There we are.
Well, only an idiot would wear a Santa hat on a day like this. That might work.
Oh, yes, yours at work. Is it hot over there? It's not hot here today.
No, it's actually quite average.
It's freezing over here.
Let's get.
That's why you got short sleeves on, eh?
Yeah.
Oh, and James, I'll send James a link. I forgot to send James a link. Let me send James a link.
It's 22 yards, right. Isn't it, a link? Oh, that's a chain.
A link.
Yeah. There's a chain and a link.
Oh, it's all going awfully well as ever. I'm just so together, aren't I? Right, up on the screen. Up on the screen is the NOTAM-O-meter, which I think is a fantastic thing that tells us, right, get rid of that. Right, here we are. Right, so ICAO, NOTAM-O-meter. You enter the country that you're interested in. In this case, it's going to be
Hold on, it says it's not a meter.
Not a meter, yes. Very good, very good. And New Zealand, it begins with that many, doesn't it? And then we wait, and it tells us that only 16.1% of NOTAMs meet all quality criteria. There are 118 active NOTAMs from New Zealand. Well, you can read yourselves what it says.
Quite often they put the NOTAM out after the event so they can be more accurate.
Well, here's the worst, what they reckon the worst NOTAM in New Zealand is at the minute. What is that? I can't even really read what that's for. Can you read Pacific Island checklist? So I think it's a pretty cool thing. And why do I think it's pretty cool? I think it's pretty cool because ICAO are manning up about a problem with data transfer and data display. And it's a huge problem for UTMs. I know here, down in Afrique du Sud, Altitude Agile has a problem because our data is so bad and they won't use it. The parks board data for the boundaries of our park, national parks where all the animals live, nobody will give a signed off definition of exactly where they are. They keep passing the ball around every time they ask. So there is no pure definition. Here, there's one here, over there, in fact, no, over there behind me. And the danger area for that, when we actually looked, is below the ground. It's about 4,000 feet. It goes up to 2,000 feet. The mountains go up to 11,000 feet behind us there.
Well, yeah, so that's pretty accurate then. You shouldn't be flying below ground. It is incredibly dangerous to fly underground.
You're right. It is accurate. It is accurate. And what I was going to do, now there's a few people here, I was going to raise a glass. I went and bought this fine quality JP, and I've got to read because JP actually stands for just perfect. This is apparently just perfect. It comes in plastic and costs less than £2 for a litre. So it's got to be good. So here we go. This is my Christmas fruit wine drink. God help me.
Finish filling my bottle.
I don't know. I quite honestly don't know how much I dare put in here. I'm going
to do some product placement. Hobgoblin. If I can have a crate, please.
That is really, really, really nice beer. That is. Oh, that's it.
God.
Is that also less than £2 a bottle? All right, here we go. This has been. I've seen shelves in the bottle store all year, and I thought, "Oh, that's
just stoke the log burner. One moment, I'm running out of logs."
Gosh, doesn't Ian have a nice chair? But I bet it gets a bit rickety-rockety, and I'm sure the foam must have failed.
After the bloody thing's failed.
As you well know, Bruce.
Where's the 4-point harness? That's what I wanted to know. For those drunken ones behind the computer.
It is a lovely chair, but I've had some problems with it. I'll say that. So, but I kept getting asked. I did a review on it, and people kept asking me, "Have you had any problems?" I got loads of private messages, loads and loads of private messages. So I thought, okay, let's share what problems I have had.
And the firmware update didn't fix it?
Firmware update didn't fix it.
Update.
I tried plugging the USB in, didn't work. No. So I'm probably not on their happy list at the moment because I've said something bad about it, but I did pay for it fully with my own money. So that's just the way it is.
Couldn't find a stolen credit card. Eh?
Couldn't find a stolen credit card.
No.
I'm going to be going down
Hey,
this
James, watch out
bottom
for splinters, mate.
Ian, I'm absolutely loving the outfit you're rocking up there.
It's for you, James. It's entirely for you. And as I promised a few of my listeners, I am half naked from the waist down.
Oh, God.
Oh, there we go.
Only company. What
Hope
do
you're
I
going to
know?
mark this child-friendly, this video, child-friendly.
There you go. That video is now being demonetized, Gary.
Oh, we did that
alcohol.
already.
Yeah, we've done that with alcohol at the top. We've already done that. Oh, Merry Christmas, Bruce. I didn't say Merry Christmas to you, Bruce. Merry Christmas, because that is
Merry
indeed
Christmas,
where you
right
are.
back at you.
Yes,
Yeah.
and to you, Bruce. Merry Christmas.
55 minutes to go, and I'll be joining you in the land of Christmas.
I'm not coming
we were
apart.
Whilst coming apart.
I'm not coming apart. You don't need to join me.
Oh, no.
Oh dear. Yes, too much champagne this morning. That's the trouble.
Absolutely.
What do you have for breakfast there? We have champagne. We have ham on toast with champagne for breakfast.
Is that a real tradition or something you're
It's
making
traditional in this household anyway. Yeah.
Cheese? Any cheese involved?
No, I have cheese every other day of the week. I have cheese and walnuts for my lunch every day. Cheese, what?
What would be the? I don't know. There's not really a traditional breakfast, and crazily, of course, people go for the traditional full Christmas lunch, even though it might be 40°C tomorrow. A roast with, it is very, very, very strange. And Christmas movies and things like that don't seem to fit in really, because of course, well, you know this, Bruce. You know it's really hot and it's a nice day. So
Scorching here. It's nearly 17 degrees.
You could cook the turkey on the patio, couldn't you?
Yeah, I tell you, if you can't cook an egg on the footpath, it's just not worth. It's not hot.
No.
No. Well, we went up to 40 earlier this week, and then we went right back down to it was 18 tonight, to 15, 18, something like that. The next day, so huge temperature differences, and yeah, I think it's causing lots of illness. But anyway, we're just talking about the NOTAM thing. What else have we seen this week that impressed us, or has nothing impressed us this week?
Did we talk about the passenger that saw the drone out the window of an airliner at 30,000 feet last week? They were very
No,
good. They're better than a pilot. That's fantastic. I don't know how they did that.
I think that has either happening on that day or just after. Yeah, that was a shocker. How
The
do you
crazy
sense?
thing is that I think the Airprox board didn't even class it as a drone. They even said that you know it's an unknown aircraft. Yet the media still push it out as a drone. So you know what needs to be done here? It's just the media doing their usual rubbish of if anyone says the word drone, then they'll say it was definitely a drone. It must have been a drone, even though the Airprox board have said it probably wasn't. So, you know, I don't think we can blame the Airprox board. And actually, you know, since we had that meeting a few months ago, there's been a lot of work going on. I don't know if you've noticed that there's quite a large number more of the Airproxes are being classified as unknown aircraft now. So we have seen a shift towards that, but unfortunately, that still doesn't stop the media from picking up on it.
Thankfully,
Well, it'll be interesting when everyone gets their Christmas drones, won't it? And see what happens, all the mayhem that ensues. They'll close Gatwick again.
well, so just a couple of days past a year ago, wasn't it? And yeah, well, all right. Then here's the question: what do we think the sales have been like this Christmas? Do you think it's been mega sales? Have there been queues and queues of people buying stuff?
It'll be crap. It'll be crap because no one wants to have to register stuff. It throws a real sort of dampener on the whole thing. Oh yeah, here's your toy, Johnny, but you've got to go and sit an exam now, and I've got to pay £9, and we've got to get the letter set and make a little thing for your side of your plane. And oh no, too bad.
Yeah, but you can just buy the sub 250 gram DJI Mavic Mini, and you don't have to obey any rules or any laws,
Yes,
any
you do.
registration or
Yes,
any.
you do. Yes, stop spreading misinformation. Fake news. Fake news. Fake news.
James Trump in the corner. Yeah, I think
But this is I think this is the problem, that people because the rules are so bloody complicated now. Like no one knows what the rules are. Like people, even you've got NQEs putting out statements at the moment saying these are the rules, and it's like everyone's like, no, it's not. Like
No, it's not.
no one has a clue what the hell's going on, because the EASA have created 80,000 different new categories with about 20 rules attached to them, and you're like, well, what category am I in? Do I have to register? Where can I fly? How close can I be to things? So they've done a great job at making things simple for us, which is, I think, the whole point of trying to make things easier for us has actually made things a whole lot harder.
That's why the Canadians have won. The Canadians, they're sub 250, no prescriptive rules. Have you seen any incidents out of Canada in the last year involving sub 250 craft and danger to people or property? Not a one. Not a one. They're probably the only country in the world, because they've said, just don't be an ass. And it's worked.
Yeah, I suspect sales-wise, I think about the only drone. It's interesting. I just had a look on Argos, who's one of the big retailers in the UK, and just type drone in and see what the top few results were. Number one was some, what was the first one? It was a cheap kids toy drone, about £60-70, very similar to all of the typical small FPV ones. Sorry, it's 34 quid. You then got the Rise Tello, which is DJI, and then you got the Mavic Mini. The fact the Mavic Mini came out a couple of months ago, I doubt much else is sold at all. Skydio are fully booked up anyway, so their numbers are done and dusted. About the only product that probably has shifted is DJI on the Mini. I suspect not even that many Mavics have sold, normal ones, this time of year. I suspect it's all been that sub-M.
The interesting thing is going to be that even these little toy drones, the little Wi-Fi ones, like the 50, 60 quid net, they're going to need registering once the EASA rules come in. How crazy is it?
Yeah, the Tello would, with the Tello, data capture device. Yes, so it would fall. So the Rise, where's mine? It's up there. Yeah, that's miniature, and that's it. Would it fall under the classification of a toy? No, not in their rules, because their toy specification is very much a toy. It was never designed for flying models. It was simply for dolls with arms and cars and things like that. So, even something as small as the Rise Tello would potentially be registerable.
With the data capture device, does that usurp the toy thing? If it's got a data capture device, then is it ruled out of being a toy? Because in that case, even the little CX-10 with the camera on it would be registerable.
Yeah, I started to read that document, and it is enormous. Absolutely, because it encompasses everything from a Barbie doll right up to a radio control car. It's certainly not a simple document to wade through.
Radio control car?
It encompasses everything that would be classified as a toy.
So when I got to Barbie doll, I got sidetracked and stopped reading.
It's huge. It's a massive document, massive. Really, if you ignore the toy document and just look at what they say would not class it as a toy, because that's the direction they've got it, and it is that camera. And what would be interesting is, can you classify the models that don't have an onboard SD card as a data capture device? Because that's the same as the Tello and a lot of the small ones. They don't record on board, do they? They just send it to the phone via Wi-Fi. So that's interesting.
You could be capturing it on the ground, though. So is it what does constitute data capture? Because just having an SD card in it or not doesn't count. Otherwise, FPV with live video and no recorder would be exempt. But I don't think it is it?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be buying myself a Mavic Mini, but I'm going to wait, I think, a little while longer, because it'll probably come down, I reckon, around about June, July sort of time when DJI start releasing the new aircraft. Because I expect they will be bringing out some new aircraft around about probably May or June time, I imagine, in time for EASA.
Yeah. But do you want to get some training first?
I've heard that the Mavic Mini isn't even going to be able to fit in the C0 category, because it's actually, I forget what it was, but I think it, if you put prop guards on, it's going to take it over 250 grams, is what I heard. But
so the safer version has to be registered, but the unsafe version doesn't.
No, and then there's an irony to the rules, unless you're going to get the Japanese battery, which is 50 grams less. No, it shouldn't. The Mini can skip certification, so that can continue under its current build. Everything else will require change. DJI have already announced that everything in 2020 that's manufactured will have ADS-B in, or I can't remember the term they actually use for their version of it, but it's basically eSense, I think it is. So, yeah, I think James is probably about right. I'd expect to see the Mavic line mid-year, maybe a little bit earlier, probably around March, April time. That's when I'd expect. That's traditionally when they release product. They don't do anything in January. Very, very rarely you see new products in January.
Well, I heard there's a rumor that there's maybe a new Inspire coming out in the summer. So
anything is possible.
Like.
Anything. Yeah, it's got to be refurbed. That's for sure. You know, at the end of the day, it has to have something done to it because it has to comply with the new regs. So, if there's going to be a new version,
it doesn't have to comply with the new regs.
No, but if they want to continue to sell, they're going to have to. You know, you can still do it outside in the specific category anyway. So you could fly it within that. But if they want to get it, because technically the Inspire is just under 4 kilos, so while it won't comply with the current A2 category as it isn't far off. The props is going to be interesting, but
the thing is, at the moment, if you've got a DJI Mavic Mini, you can't fly it within 150 meters of congested area. Yep. So you know, given the current rules that there are, I would probably say that not more than 90% of people are probably already breaking those rules. So what's to say that people won't continue to do that past 1st of July anyway? So
exactly. You know, is everyone going to go, oh, I'm not going to use? You know, we've got the transition class till 2022 anyway. At the end of the day, we can still use those aircraft until 2022. But the reality is, you're going to sit there and say, sorry, my Inspire 2 I've just bought last week because it's a current model. At the end of next year, I'm not going to fly it. No. The reality is this class system is a mess. There's no other way to put it. Police officers are never going to get their heads around it. You know, people are going to spin it over and look for a label that says A1, A2, A3, or C1, C2, C3, etc. Our authorities going to know that. The police going to know that. How are they going to turn around and go, oh, that's legit? That's not. That's an earlier Inspire 2 and not a later Inspire 3. They're not going to understand this stuff.
But won't the burden of proof be on the operator to show that they're operating legally? They'll be assumed to be in violation until they can prove otherwise. Well, that's how the law works these days, the assumption of guilt.
I was having a spirited discussion on Facebook today with someone about the PFCO, who was saying to people, don't get a PFCO now because all the rules are changing. And I was like, well, actually, basically what a PFCO is essentially what's going to be an OSC. You know, you can pay £250 and you can get in 6 months' time will be equivalent to an OSC for a 30 meters on takeoff, 50 during flight. When you get, you know, if you've got an Inspire, if you want to start flying Inspires around, then you're going to be in a situation where you know, come July next year, you're not going to be able to. You're going to have to fly 150 meters away from people. So. Yes, I would say that, you know, if anything, really, you want to be getting a PFCO in before the new regulations come out so that you get transferred across to the specific category beforehand. Otherwise, come 1st of July, suddenly, if you want to fly that Inspire, you have to actually go through an operational safety case to be able to do that with any kind of meaningful distances.
Yeah, I agree with it, and I don't in some ways. James is right in the sense of we're going to get grandfathered something. We don't know what it is quite yet. We believe it's going to be an additional permission. It's not going to be this GA, but it's going to be this other permission. And I think we will benefit from that. However, on the flip side, I think for the majority of people operating commercially, when this settles, and that isn't going to be for 2 years. So if you're working today or you want to work in the next 2 years, you're going to need to do the PFCO. But when the land lies, when everything settles, if we do see the aircraft in the A2 category that we think we're going to see, like the Inspire class of craft, it wouldn't be an Inspire 2, but whatever, say the Inspire 3 or 4, or what anyone else, the Unique H is another craft that would fall into that class, you'd be able to operate with a very decent aircraft with decent permissions down to 30 meters, in fact closer, if it's got the low speed mode, without any additional permissions needed. But again, that's 2 years down the line. And as James said, today you're better doing the PFCO. That's for sure. 2 years, I think it'll look very different.
Well, I suppose from an international perspective, it's if Europe really does push on and this gets embedded deeply, and it starts working well, they'll have set the standards because electronic conspicuity, correct me if I'm wrong, is also beginning to rear its head in all of this. And the FAA's just kicked down the road again the electronic conspicuity piece in America. So they're beginning to really fall behind. So let's say they take another 3 or 4 years to think about that. Europe might have it in place, they might have all the weights in place, and manufacturers will be making stuff for that. So I wonder if that will start driving more international standards, really, if everyone will just have to start adopting that. Otherwise, it can be dreadful if there's a completely different set of rules for the USA and Australia and all that sort of thing, if it's not harmonized, rank ends.
Yeah,
But isn't that the case now?
Yeah. And that's the funny thing. It is, we've got the first thing we've all agreed really on. Well, two things we've all agreed on: 2.4 gigahertz for the most part. Somehow the whole world landed on that together for the most part, and we've all agreed on 250 grams. Somehow we've all got to that, apart from Japan. That's 200. Whether we
actually know where the 250 grams came from.
Denmark. It was Denmark. It was a Danish study. Yeah.
Danish study, really? Okay. And what did they find out?
They wrapped it in bacon.
Yes. That's right. It's so many years ago, I can't remember, but they did some study, 250 grams. They said tickety boo. Then DJI went, 250 grams, that looks good. And then DJI got behind that standard as well. And I think that's what's driven it around the world. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Canada also had some big talks about it as well.
Yes, yeah, but we were bounding the 250 grams around a good year and a half. Well, when that first document came out, the CAA were really on board with that, weren't they? In the early days of all the paperwork, they were very much saying 250 is where it's at. I still find it amusing that in this new system, I'm going to be able to fly a C1 class craft, which is sub 900 grams. For the most part, the Anafi will fall into that. A new Mavic would. The current Mavic wouldn't quite get into it, but a new one would. And I would be able to fly that next to people, but not directly over. That means I could fly that within an inch of someone's head. And I just find it amusing that the rules, yet these have been brought up for safety. And James has mentioned this himself a few times. Yet actually, we're taking away all of the safeguards. What we're saying is, to do commercial operation, we're not going to require a little bit about what you're doing. Let's be honest. Not every person that comes out of taking a PFCO is at the same level. Some guys go into it with a deep understanding. Some guys come out of it with a basic understanding. But at the end of the day, everyone's gone through a level of training that puts us all at a minimum standard. Yet we're tossing that out the window. And we're going to say, you know what, you can take a 900 gram craft and fly it within an inch of someone's head. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And you can use it for filming commercially and get paid for doing that as well.
Well, one thing, I don't know if you saw the quiz I put up on the PFCO group a while ago, talking about what people thought of EASA. Well, the results of that basically have gone across to the CAA in a letter. So we've basically pushed that forward across to the CAA. Back a few months ago, Secretary of State, what's his name? Grant.
Yeah.
Someone I can't, Sharp or something like that. I can't think for the life. I've already had about 3 glasses of wine, so apologies. Grant Snaps or something like that. But he basically, so Secretary of State is an MP, but he's basically said that any kind of changes in drone regulations that RPAS should be consulted from now on. So we've kind of tried to go and get a feeling amongst the community as to what commercial operators think of the new regulations, and we've put that back to Grant, in the form of that opinion. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens from that. So I don't think any rules are set in stone yet. We've still got 6 or 7 months ago, and 6 or 7 months in the drone world is a long time. So don't think for one moment that the rules are set in stone yet. But certainly we will be hammering on the door and doing everything we can to make sure that commercial operators are sort of looked after, and their interests are looked after. But it's a difficult one, because what you don't want to do is set up a protectionist kind of ideology in the UK, but at the same time you don't want a system that is going to potentially threaten the long-term viability of the industry. So we want as many companies as possible adopting drones. I think we all want that. Maybe operators might be opposed to that, but I think in the long term it would be a good thing if companies adopt them. But what we want is a system that's done effectively, so companies don't adopt them, have an accident, and then say, okay, we're not going to get anywhere near drones again, and then write them off, and you start getting scare stories, and then suddenly everyone's opposed to drones rather than being pro drone. So there's a fine balance between the two, I think, and we just need to go and get that right.
It's interesting because I'm quite conflicted. I don't want anything to change, but I do, in the sense of, I think the safety aspect, I think, yeah, we need to do something. But I also like the idea of everyone being able to operate commercially if they want to, and seeing where we end up. On the flip side of that, okay, let's look at the two biggest bits that will affect. It's going to affect estate agents and photographers. They're the two who are going to benefit from this overnight, because currently a wedding photographer can't take an aerial image of the wedding party with his own drone. Is that, unless he's done a PFCO, is that common sense? In some ways, yes, because what you don't want him to do is fly it into the wedding party and injure someone on the day. On the flip side of it, does he really need 2 days of ground school to take an aerial shot 25 foot above the ground? So there's a balance to be had. Estate agents is a bit more complex, because at the end of the day, they're going to be operating in urban environments around other properties and other people. And that is a very different animal to most wedding photographers who are at buildings and stuff, generally out of the way. But on the one side, I'd like it to blow the doors open and see where it lands. But on the flip side, really, there does need to be some safeguards in place for people. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
The weird thing for me, though, is the way that they, at the moment, you've got 2 days worth of theoretical training, which I would say 90% of is a load of rubbish.
100%. Yeah.
Do you really need to start learning about cumulonimbus clouds and stratus clouds if you're flying a drone at up to 400 feet? There are so many elements to that course, to the theoretical component, which I would say could be removed, and you wouldn't get any reduction in safety. But actually, the practical element, which is about flying the actual thing, which is the whole point, which is how you reduce risk, and being able to take over in manual. If something goes wrong, being able to take over manually and correct it and land it safely and avoid risk, they're wiping that out. They're getting rid of that part. So the bit that was actually useful, they're getting rid of, and the bit which wasn't useful, they're keeping. It just seems completely, completely bonkers to me. I would say the most important part was the practical training for me. I think they're saying, well, these drones now are going to be fitted with all these new safety devices. They're going to be low risk and all the rest of it. But drones are never just work, unless you've got a deep system, and they do. But still, you get errors with firmware. You get you get firmware problems, and then suddenly they come out with a new revision. Well, in that time, you could get 20 crashes happen. So there's always going to be issues with drones, because they're complicated things. And I think
we've got the uncrashable drone now, haven't we? The Skydio 2. And people are managing to crash it.
Well, you need to buy your drones from Banggood, man. You get them from the wrong place. You raise a very good point, though, that this whole testing thing, and it was really shown last week when Kazza commented that We can't let people fly drones beyond visual line of sight in the middle of nowhere like the desert and the outback, because these drones are prone to flying away. Really seriously, the regulators just got no clue anymore, and they're saying you can't fly BVLOS, it's way too dangerous. Yet I looked last week, just did a bit of a browse. I found over a dozen videos on YouTube of amateurs, people who haven't got qualifications and haven't set all these exams and learned about cirrus clouds in the backyard, flying beyond visual line of sight. And I didn't see one death, one injury, one situation where I thought anybody's personal property was at risk. These are amateurs doing these things. You've got the professional regulators telling us what to do and getting it totally wrong because they just don't know what they're doing. No experience. I would not get the tea lady to write a book on brain surgery. I'd get a surgeon to do it. But no, regulators, they sit behind a desk, they think they know it all, they've read the books, and they're going to tell us how to do the things that we know how to do, but they're going to tell us what they think we should be doing. And if we don't do it their way, you don't get the certifications, you don't get to do your flying. It's an impediment to safety in some cases.
It's interesting because it's a bit. James's point is quite interesting because you imagine a driving test where they sat you in a room for 12 hours to make you learn every bit of it, but it was your responsibility to have learned to drive before you actually got there, and then they just went, "Yeah, that's fine, go." It is bonkers. More than anything, would I 2 hours, say, of instructed flight training, whether that be by the BMFA or someone else, would be a far better way of ensuring safety than just making them sit through this 30-question test that we're going to get for the A2. I'm forgetting now, James, what category it is. I've had a beer as well, so even I'm starting to lose it. For that category, for the COFC test. So, because they believe that's going to be 30 questions, isn't it? So, it would be far better to say you must have had a minimum of 2-3 hours training. And Heward was very interesting. Why don't they say you should have had a minimum of 2 to 3 hours training with a commercial operator as per PFCO or whatever that's going to become? Because that would then even then allow us to be able to actually get involved rather than just keeping it at the NQEs or the RAEs as it's going to be.
Yeah, well, I know when I was used to work at Plough and Craven, I used to train up all of our new pilots, and when they first come in, I used to stick them through a day's worth of standard training, which is sort of your bait. Essentially, it's PFCO, but just making sure that they're sort of a decent standard. And then I'd go through some advanced training, which was more around about sort of congested areas, sort of trying to recreate a congested area scenario and the risks involved flying near things, recovery of orientation, disorientation at distance, wind turbulence around structures, and all those kind of elements. And to think that you don't have to do that as a commercial operator, people can just learn as they go along. But if anything, the practical element needs to increase, not decrease. Wiping it out, it just seems crazy. It seems absolutely mental to me.
It's like learning to fly a plane. You don't have to sit in a room and learn all the theory, and then they don't just say, well, go and pick a plane and go and fly it. They teach you the practicals. It's the most important part. Well, it's certainly an equally important part to the theory. And I've always been surprised at these drone certification things. They just assume you know how to fly a drone. I mean, seriously, isn't it kind of important that you know the practical side of things as well as the theory? But how do they get to that point?
The PFCO says you must have had a minute. Sorry, James, what's the PFCO? Minimum of 2 hours off the top of my head? 2
hours in the last 3 months.
3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
Which you can write on a bit of paper. Let's be honest.
So you have to prove that by a logbook or something like that, then.
Yeah. It's bonkers.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's it's all well and good when the drone flies correctly, and I think the problem is from a regulator's perspective, they think that these things basically fly themselves now, which
not quite.
Yeah, they do in certain circumstances, but
yeah,
if you get magnetic interference on takeoff, if you get a prop failure or a motor failure or a speed controller failure, there's so many things that could go wrong, that you need to be really on the ball with your flying skills to try and mitigate that risk. And I think putting too much reliance on the technology You know, I can completely understand what they're trying to do, and I applaud them for doing it. I think they've just overshot the mark a bit.
It's interesting because actually Gary hinted at it there about the uncrashable. Should we talk about that, Gar, a little bit? It's been an interesting week. I don't know if anyone else has noticed. Obviously, the Skydio 2s are landing in everyone's, well, not everyone's hands, but a lot of people's hands. I've managed to see 3 crashes now. I don't want to beat up on these guys, but my personal opinion is in all of the situations I've seen so far, I think the pilot was pushing it to the limit. I think, look, there's been a huge amount of marketing and hype and info around this drone, and the tech behind it is amazing. It is frankly amazing. However, no technology is perfect, and if you push it to the limit, there is a point where it will bite back, and we've seen a couple of people do it this week. And I do feel for this guy a little bit as well, because it's a lot of money down the pan. This gentleman was flying it down through a bridge, and it's just not picked up one of the steel spars, and it's hit it and it's crashed. In this situation, I think it was down to low light personally, as well as the colouring of the barring matching the sky in the background. And whilst it's not contrast-based object avoidance, it's still going to have an effect, and it's a deader. It's a funny one, isn't it? I feel for the op. But people also have to understand this technology is not perfect. If you push it to the limits, it is going to fail. The interesting thing with the Skydio 2 is there's no compass, and that's what really got me excited about these videos, where the fact that people are able to fly it through metalwork because there's no mag on board. It's entirely using vision-based direction. It's able to fly through bridges and things without problems at all, any metalwork. And I think we'll see a lot of the drones go that way this year onwards, actually. You know, if we historically look at problems, it's always generally been GPS or compass. That's really where the main problems around drones flying away or losing control and things like that. And I think you'll see a lot more of the manufacturers go to take the compass sensor out and move towards a visual tracking. But they're starting to end up binning them. It isn't perfect, you know, no product is. Again, I think in that situation, it was too low light and it just couldn't see it coming.
I think the thing is, you can never get rid of the compass, because a visual sense, like you're going to always need the compass in there, and it's going to have to be a sensor fusion jobby, because a camera will only tell you relative orientation. It won't tell you, am I pointing north or south?
Skydio don't have one. They don't have one in the S2 at all.
No, but the thing is, what will it do waypoints?
But the thing is, once you've got some movement, your GPS will give you a heading, and that will be relative to north anyway. It's only when you're actually hovering that you actually need a compass.
You've got your GPS heading, and you've also got your IMU heading as well, because the thing to take into account is obviously the IMU can log its initial heading with GPS direction. And then obviously if you turn the aircraft 90 degrees, the IMU will detect 90-degree rotation in yaw, so it will know roughly where it is. And GPS heading will kick in once it starts moving in a certain direction. You know, it has to move to be able to do it, as Bruce said. It's interesting what Skydio are doing. The tracking looks very good. If you look at the traditional areas where a compass would give you a problem, which is just straight down a line, it's fairly good. It really, really is. But again, that sensing system isn't perfect. At the end of the day, it's going to have things it's going to miss.
I guess what happens though if you're sort of I don't know, inspecting, if you're flying beside a motorway or something and looking at the side of a lorry, and the lorry goes past you, or you're flying up in the clouds and the clouds are moving, you know, suddenly using vision, like, you know, you only have to look at pilots sort of, you know, flying when you're flying with sort of reduced visibility. There are certain scenarios where actually, you know, you can get tricked into thinking, and you can get very disorientated very quickly if you're flying in clouds, and you come out the cloud and you're like upside down. Because you don't really, you know, you're feeling G through the bottom of the aircraft, but you don't actually know which way you're pointing or what orientation you are, because you can't see the horizon. There are a lot
That's
of
why they have gyros, which drive artificial horizons, and the drone's got gyros, and it works from the compass setting. it can interpolate any differences between compass and actual heading, and it can keep sort of those truly IMU systems are actually incredibly accurate. I think some of the cruise missiles had them. They've got such precision. They can fly without GPS and without magnetic compass for quite long distances with very small margins of error.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all doable.
About $1 IMUs, though. We're not talking about.
Yes.
And that's only going to get better with sensor fusion and better IMUs. The $1 IMU eventually will be as good as that.
But do you think those $20,000 toilet seats produce a different result to the $1 ones?
I do.
It's
much better, yes.
It has been interesting, and it's been some fantastic videos on the Skydio 2 this week. There's been one from one of their PR guys. I thought it was just a general user, but it actually turns out it's their PR guy, and he was flying it through the woods, through trees, literally putting it through gaps like that, and it was fantastic to see, But on the flip side, I just hope they haven't set themselves up for too much noise when people do start binning them in stupid situations, because it's going to happen. At the end of the day, you make an idiot-proof system, people find ways around it, and the idiots get bigger is probably the right term to use, or cleverer. But I just hope they haven't set themselves up. It's going to be interesting to see how they handle it. They've got this warranty. I'm not sure it covers this poor guy. Personally, I've read the terms, and I'm sitting here thinking, if I had to make the decision on it, it would be no, based on their safe flight policy, I think it is. But other than that, they're landing in people's hands, they're delivering, so we'll just have to see.
Under promise, over deliver. That's the secret to success.
It's dangerous marketing like that. The only problem is when you market it flying around people, flying through trees and bushes, look, marketing is marketing. We know manufacturers are good at showing their product at the best it can possibly be, and then user experience often doesn't quite meet that. For the most part, that's been the case around object tracking. All of the systems are not perfect. They don't really behave well in certain situations. I think Skydio have sort of set themselves up the bar very high here, but they just have to be careful that they don't begin to get people pissed off and hating them because they're not covering warranty. But it is going to happen. At the end of the day, it happens to all manufacturers.
I thought it was very, very brave of them to remove the prop guards to make it so the props are actually exposed, because if you're going to fly close proximity like that, all you need is a tiny touch on an exposed prop and you're flipped. Whereas if you've got a guard or you're inside the frame like it was before, you can accept some tolerance in terms of your negotiation. You can bounce off stuff. So they really did have a lot of confidence in their own technology to make the dramatic change in the design of the airframe.
It's interesting you say that, because I think if that accident had happened with prop guards, it might have recovered as well. Interestingly, as you say, it would have just gone pum, and then it's amazing. I've seen Phantoms recover hitting a tower. I've seen Mavics recover. As long as the prop isn't damaged, the IMUs are really good at getting themselves back up the right way and carrying on, and they're all capable of that.
Well, you would think it was certainly seeing those big pylons on the. I suppose that's the stage, isn't it? The next stage is, there's some big pylons every X meter. I wonder if this is a bridge. Therefore, I'll slow down and it'll start recognizing stuff in its surround. Give it. I wonder what this thing is, because then you'd think it would throttle it down. What's its return to home action? Do we know if it detects something?
It will all the flight is assisted. The easiest term to use is all flight is generally assisted. So you push forward, and it doesn't quite work like some of the DJI ones where you push forward, it hits an object and stops. It'll go around it, over, through, and the idea is it sort of goes, you want to go forward, I'll find a way of getting you forward, and it will try and find its way through. And it's only the biggest obstacles where it comes to a complete stop. As for its return to home, I think it's very similar to usual action. If it's lost signal or anything like that, it will return to home. I don't know how long it would sit at an object whilst it was still in control signal for. So if you come up against a brick wall, I don't think it would return to home. It would just sit there until you tell it to do something else, unless the signal went or something like that.
Do we know the ICAO personal licensing? Do we know about any changes in November 22 from ICAO? Or is that the EASA stuff? Jeffrey
I know
Smith.
what it is.
I'm not sure I'm up to speed with that. So Jeffrey, if you've got a link, pop it in the comments, and we'll have a look. I'm aware of the IASA, which is coming, but not ICAO.
Well, ICAO don't have any jurisdiction. They're a standards organisation, but I don't believe that ICAO are planning on. I know they've got some kind of like global what's it called? The global trust framework they're working on at the moment in aviation in general. But I don't know of any drone related stuff they're doing. Maybe you can elaborate.
Yeah, I'm just typically typing that in. Okay, Annex 1, personal licensing, ICAO, there it is, Annex 1.
Yeah, personal licensing, okay.
I'm going to drop the comment in here.
I know that the IASA brought out the, I forget what it's called, is it like the opinion or something like that? Let me find it. There was a document they brought out fairly recently, which was which basically went into some of the new things like EV loss and stuff like that. So there was some quite interesting stuff there. Basically, it sort of looks as though some of the more standard OSCs is going to fall into this specific category, but they're going to make it slightly easier. So if you've got a drone which meets certain requirements, again, so you're not just got C0, C1, C2, C3, C4. You're going to have like C5 to about C50, which are going to basically cover a whole bunch of other classes of drones for specific scenario. I think it's all part of the standard scenario piece. So I don't know if you know much about standard scenarios, but what they're trying to do is to look at specific situations such as extended visual line of sight and things like that, that they can set a form. They can basically put together a set of requirements and that aircraft can meet, and then it makes it easy to go and get an exemption for those cases. And I know IASA brought out something quite recently on that. I'm trying to find the IASA link, but
so James, this is going to be levied on the aircraft and not the pilot complying, because at the moment, for the most part, an OSC is about procedures and what the pilot will do, not necessarily the aircraft. And this is going to levy it more on the equipment. So if you had an aircraft that was C5, for instance, whatever that would be, you could fly over crowded of more than 1,000, 1,500 people and do those kind of things. So it will be not as much a set of procedures, but a set of safety systems within the aircraft to allow that to take place.
Yeah, essentially, it's going to be again hinged upon the aircraft. So, again, I don't know how useful any of this stuff is going to be, because they set all these requirements, but the regulation side of it, is that really the part that stops people from using drones? People are currently coping at the moment. If they want to buy a drone, and really what the key criteria are is its performance, what its cost is, what its performance is, and then once they've worked out what drone they want, they then work out how to go and get that through the regulations. Now, obviously, from a manufacturer's perspective, the manufacturers are going to go and create drones that try and fit in with those regulations. But if by fitting in with those regulations, it puts them at a disadvantage, then they're not going to do so. So what will be interesting is to see, for example, like this new Inspire, if they have to go and stick this huge cage around it, and it's suddenly got a 15-minute flight time instead of a 25-minute flight time, well, is that gonna make it less competitive? Would people want to buy the Inspire 2 rather than the Inspire 3? So you've got that kind of like balance there, which is going to be interesting. And I don't know how it's going to play out yet, but certainly there is going to be a trade-off between the two, I think.
It's going to be interesting because there's a lot of talk about new aircraft at the moment, and based on that, then you could have aircraft with 5 or 6 labels on it. This aircraft complies with C25, 16, 5, 4, and 2. Because that at the end of the day, there's going to be overlap among these as well, isn't there, to be able to do it. It's going to be interesting to see what the manufacturers do with this, because I don't think the cine drone industry is as big as everyone thinks. I've been saying this for about 2 years. Everyone's been shouting about when the next Inspire or the next big aircraft will come. And I think it's very telling that we haven't seen much development in the cine drone industry. We've had the large Hex come from Freefly. Recently, the Alta X. That's about the only real big aircraft we've seen. The M600 is the other one from DJI. That's not changed for a number of years. The Inspire 2 hasn't changed for a number of years. So I don't think the cine drone market is anywhere near as big as everyone thinks, and that's why we've seen very little innovation in it, because at the end of the day, the guys who are in that industry are either flying very big heavy lifters with a red on top, and the money they're dealing with just they don't even get to the level we're talking about with some of these aircraft, or the guys who are using some of these mid to small size cine drones are not changing their equipment every 12 months. And I just don't know if we'll even see. I think we're going to have to see a change this year. At the end of the day, the regs are going to dictate a change. So I would be shocked if every aircraft wasn't re-released in 2020. I would be astonished if every aircraft wasn't. But I also don't necessarily think there's going to be massive innovation either.
I'm just typing in the thing, Jeffrey. What are your thoughts? Because I'm instantly looking through this thing, and I remember another reason I like Kao. They have a link for their news, and they use it in their feed from a site called SUS News. So thanks, Kao. I forgot they did that. But I see mention of a CPL. Which, if that comes in, that'll be quite. That's great. I've got one. Hey, put a ladder on, right? But if that comes in, that'll be amazing. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts? Maybe you could type them in for us.
And speaking of innovation, did you see that twin rotor V thing that's going to take over the 50-minute flight times? Yes, from the same company that crowdfunded a drone that hasn't yet shipped. But I mean, it sounds like a bit of hype to me.
I think I trolled that post of yours, didn't I, Gary? Because they basically said, I thought the whole point of going from a helicopter to a quadcopter is the fact that you've got like less mechanical complexity. You've just got static props which spin, and then it's all done by electronics. And it's kind of like, okay, well, let's go back towards a helicopter. Let's make it not quite as efficient as the helicopter, and we're going to have all of these tilting blades on it. I'm not saying there isn't a market for it, but I can't see what that market is. What is the advantage you get? Why would you go for that other than a helicopter, or that other than a drone? I can't see it yet. Whether it's, well, you obviously got a better endurance, but you get a better endurance with a helicopter. So is it sort of like a halfway house? Do you get better? Do you have slightly better mechanical complexity? So it's not quite as complex as one of them crazy sort of swash plate helicopters. So it's slightly more simple, but you also get the better endurance.
You're overlooking the really big feature. It looks different. You can do 3D renders like they have done. You can hype it up and you can sell it to people who will part with their money before it's even off the drawing board. That's the secret of it.
Does it actually exist then, or not?
I haven't seen anything tangible. I've seen obviously computer generated stuff.
So I did see some like aerial video of it looking like it was flying.
I think we're over the forest and things. I think that was actually just CGI. It didn't look very good to me. Looking at it from a CGI, somebody who does visual effects, the lighting angles were wrong and the contrast that was wrong. It was just, it didn't look like it was real to me. And the thing is that it's as you say, helicopters provide a solution, and that thing, I don't know, it's like they're just looking for a reason to get people to part with their money. If it's that good, then build it, put it on the market, and people will buy it. Don't expect people to fund your flights of fantasy. Look at all the drone crowdfunders that have gone bung.
There's a lot of synergy between that and UAM, I think. You know, with all
I'm
these
gonna
new.
get a beer. I'll be back now.
Sorry.
I'm gonna get a beer. I'll be back now.
Oh well, fair enough. Oh no, yes.
If
No,
he gets
no.
too busy, he might not be back.
I was going to do the same, but I'll wait. But yeah, no, I think UAM is like in the same ballpark. You know, you've got all of these manufacturers coming up with these fanciful designs with like 27 rotors on them, with rotating rotors, and all sorts of crazy wing designs and all all the rest of it. I think I've probably seen 2 or 3 that I thought, okay, this is quite clever. There was one which it kind of lands and rolls as it lands, and then it takes off it and then sort of rotates after it's taken off to like an X-wing type formation. I think I can't remember what it was called, but it basically, I think it takes off like a quadcopter essentially, and then essentially it transitions from the quadcopter to a forward flight like this, but it's got like wings in between the quads.
Yeah. I know one.
And but then it's got like a weird shaped bottom, so it's sort of, as it comes down and lands, it sort of then
It's like a boat.
I know women like that.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was quite neat, but again, is that going to ever become an air taxi? Probably not. It'll be there for a bit of fun. They're going to maybe take it on a few of these air shows, and someone will pay $100,000 to see it tested and flown and all the rest of it. But yeah, I still like the helicopter. It's it sounds really boring because I'm a very forward thinking kind of person, but I'm also like, I like things that are real. I like real innovation. I don't like what I would call venture capitalism is innovation, which is basically kind of whoever's holding the bag last ends up the one who looks like the fool. But yeah, I think Blade is that kind of that is innovation. That is what real innovation looks like, as far as I'm concerned. So you do that, and then you say, okay, well, what can we do to make the helicopter slightly better? You could come up with a 20 blade design, but is it better than a helicopter? Well, I've not seen any maths or proof or any kind of sort of evidence to show that it is any better than a helicopter at the moment. So
no. Do you see what Airbus bailed out that Valhalla project, however you say it? They bailed this week. The one that, and I'm blaming Bruce, that one in New Zealand is merged with Boeing, and we know how Boeing works with rockets and airliners now, so that ain't going anywhere either. No, I think they've a lot of them are doing their research and going, maybe not then. I think for my predictions for the next decade, one of the things that will not happen in the next decade is urban air mobility. I guarantee it. But other people will say it is because, of course, UAM does include small delivery stuff like Zipline and all that sort of thing. So people will say, oh, no, UAM did happen. Look, there's Zipline. No, because they bundled it in. NASA bundled that into the term. So you can get away with it, but it's not what people are imagining. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you just UAM will happen, but you just have to redefine what UAM is, and then you'll be all right.
Yeah. We'll make it happen. Just we'll define the thing that works. But no, passenger carrying, you can't beat a helicopter. And how many helicopters? Oh, you must get another. But how many helicopters are in the world? How many helicopters can get onto a high-rise tower blocks landing platform in the center of a city every hour? It's not many. It's not going to save the world. It's not going to save city center commuting. It's a ridiculous idea.
I'm kind of with Elon Musk on this. It's a boring it's a boring idea, but it's a clever idea. Just go underground. We have it in London. It's called the London Underground. It works kind of okay, but people don't get annoyed with noise. You don't have the noise of helicopters and air taxis flying over you all the time. It's safe.
Just the screeching of the bloody wheels when you're going around those corners.
Yeah.
Do you live in London, James? Do you live in the
Yeah. So
Why does
Jubilee
that happen?
roundabout Baker Street is
Yeah.
you basically need to stick your fingers in your ears, otherwise you go deaf. But
Yeah.
you do get that occasionally, but that's all because of historic reasons that we've got a antiquated underground system. But yeah, sometimes I kind of think that with these things is it looks flashy. You get a load of people who've got money and they think, well, mate, this seems like a cool idea. I'll probably enjoy this project, and I don't think they've necessarily got the financials in the. They're not doing it for financial reasons. In a lot of scenarios, they're possibly doing it for good PR. At the end of the day, PR is developing new innovative products to go and get PR for your company is a business model. You look at Amazon; they've done it fantastically well with the Amazon Prime Air. They launched the video for Amazon, one of the videos for Amazon Prime Air about 4 or 5 weeks before Christmas. Sort of showing, oh look, you can go and get your stuff delivered, by drone. You're going to be able to get your stuff delivered by drone. And I remember, I watched that video at the time, and about a week later, I went and bought all of my Christmas presents on Amazon. And if there hadn't been that video, I'm not sure I would have done. But I kind of thought, oh, actually, that's probably an easy way to do it, rather than having to go around the city and buy them all from the shops. I just buy them from Amazon. And so
they didn't. Have they had a drone video this year in the UK?
I've not seen much from them recently, I've got to admit.
They didn't have one last year.
They're doing some great work. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to diss what they're doing, because they are really moving the industry forwards. But at the same time, I think it can work. I think it could, I think the numbers will work when you start getting to that kind of scale, but it's just such a huge leap that has to be made. We haven't got a stepping stone approach. I very much believe in the drone delivery, but I would say, deliver medical packages up the side of mountains in ski resorts or stuff like that. That to me seems like a good place to start. But trying to send a new watch to someone, can you not wait 24 hours for your watch? It just doesn't seem like it's not the technology. The technology is there for it. We could already do it. I think probably 10 years ago we could have done it, at least. So it's not that. The regulation is obviously a blocker. But to be honest, the regulation is starting to get to a point where I think it could be done. I think the biggest blocker is actually the business model.
Yeah, and Merry Christmas to me. It's now Christmas in South Africa. Just
Merry Christmas. On that note, I'm going to grab another drink.
Get yourself another drink. General Rules, Chapter 2, Subpart B. Jeffrey's putting in the comments. I'll put it up here. Remote pilots, licenses, and ratings. I have been out of the loop with this, Jeffrey. I've been completely
I've
out.
not seen this. I don't normally deal at that level, do they? Because it's disseminated down to each individual organization to deal with that side of it.
Well, there's a whole page for Annex 1 for Annex 1 for flight crew licensing. There it is, RPA. Let's see if I can get the right page up.
Unless they're going to put in just a basic groundwork of what they want a commercial operator to have. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I know a lot of countries are saying, well, we're sort of waiting to see what ICAO rules it comes down side of. And if that's the case, well, that will put the cat amongst opinions. But I've got a CPL. I'm okay. Pull the ladder up. It's okay. I'm all right.
So Veriport South Africa isn't going to be making money anytime in the next 10 years, in your opinion, then, Gar?
No.
You're not going to get investment like this, right? You're not learning the tricks.
No. I will. I'll put some renders up and make something up. I'll make some
Yeah.
hyperbole up. But look, everything will be all right. No, I mean, if you just, if I had the cash, I would have bought myself a weather station for Christmas to start logging the weather properly. Because
Yeah.
if you just look at the weather, there's a whole number of days that I would have had to have been closed. And I'm sure the back of the bag packet venture capitalist calculations don't include the weather on the sector. And that's into a pretty open field in the middle of nowhere. Imagine a skyscraper landing in on top of a skyscraper. It'd just be.
I still can't get my head around this whole drone delivery thing. You see Amazon, you see. I know what Amazon are doing. Amazon are very clever. People see Amazon as the little company that delivers you. Sorry, it's not a shotgun going off. It's my log burner. People see Amazon as this company that delivers parcels, but people forget Amazon are a services business more than anything else, and they run half the world's websites on their servers. They secure half the world's data. So what Amazon are very good at doing is building a system and then selling that service to run that system to others, and that's what they're doing. They're not going to want to deliver parcels. What they want to control is the UTM. The back end and all of that. That's what yeah.
So I mean, they've had fantastic advertising. All the newspapers, when they first said he was going to do it, went nuts for it, went mild for it. And so they've had amazing advertising, and the the value out of that must far exceed whatever they've put into that barn in Cambridgeshire.
What's it? What, 2 or 3 people probably on 25, 30 grand a year? So what's that? Let's say there's 10 people and the budget's £1 million a year. Right. The advertising they've had, it's a bargain. Absolute bargain.
People will say, like I Google something, people will say, "Oh, an Amazon delivery drone." That is a sort of, it's become a phrase, even though they don't bloody exist. But I stood. Yes, I have had. But I've only had this much. But I was I think it was Pity Patrick's not here. I think it was 2010 when Amazon came to Farnborough and gave their chat and gave their airspace vision, which basically was Amazon owns all of it below 400 feet. Thank you very much. Now go away, regulator. And the man, I'm not going to name names, but the man from the CAO I stood next to said, "Not on your Nelly," as the woman was saying it. He just said, "Not on your Nelly. That's never happening here." But that is kind of, since then, it feels like where it's going. It feels like they're beginning to get their way. Jeffrey's saying Amazon also known as EVI Technologies. Well, let's look at that then, Jeffrey. Let's look at EVI Technologies.
But it's interesting that in the USA, the only companies that have been given this ability to deliver stuff, sort of written off to say, "Go and do your stuff, boys," are UPS and Google.
Yeah.
Amazon, it's interesting actually, because it's been a bit of a bad week for them as well in the press, if you have seen, because they've had that baby monitor story, which has caught them a little bit, which is Ring, which is an Amazon-owned company.
And people keep getting delivered the wrong stuff. They order something and get something completely different. According to the Daily Mail, that must be true.
Yeah, no, some woman had one of the Ring cameras in her kid's room and someone hacked into it and spoke to her kids. And it was quite sinister. Quite sinister indeed. Yeah. Now Amazon are saying, or Ring are saying, that they've had no breach, so they're laying it at her door. But even so, the video is chilling. A 5, 6, 7-year-old girl in a bedroom, and it's just a random guy that says, "You can do whatever you want. You can smash your TV up if you want. I'm your best friend. Don't worry." And you're like, "Whoa, that's dodgy territory."
I saw that movie. There was a Poltergeist or something.
Yeah, it's not good. So they've had a bit of a rough week. They want to own the technology behind this, and that's what Amazon's all about: building up IP and running it in the background. But you're not going to have drones delivering your £6 mobile phone case.
I've said it a million times before, but the key missing ingredient: electronic conspicuity, and you know, I'll keep harping on. We can talk about UTM until we're blue in the face, but nothing's going to happen until you've got electronic conspicuity. It is the hammer that's going to break the dam. Once you've got that, then everything else will come from it. And we're spending too much time on technologies that aren't actually the critical breakthrough technology for the drone industry. The breakthrough is going to be when we know where every aircraft is, and every aircraft and every drone is able to avoid them. Because at that point, then drones can do whatever the hell they want. You know, as long as you've got an algorithm which can avoid aircraft, then if you know where the aircraft are, then you haven't got an issue there. So I think that's got to be the biggest breakthrough, but it's also the biggest challenge. And it's kind of like, well, let's tackle all the easy ones. Let's go and, you know, create a flight map, which, you know, I think Altitude Angel are doing a great job. You know, it's a brilliant system, but what are we doing about electronic conspicuity? Because without that, their system isn't going to reach its full potential. We need that, and then, you know, you need tactical, you need strategic, and then you need collision avoidance. We're missing that collision avoidance piece.
But hang on a minute. But most, in fact, I think just about everywhere in the world now, if you're flying outside of Class G, you've got to have ADS-B on a manned aircraft, right? So we've got electronic conspicuity, and if you're flying Class G airspace, you're not supposed to be below 500 feet in a manned aircraft. So the drones are at 400 and below. There's no issues.
No, it's not true. I think you're allowed below 500 feet. You just can't be within 500 feet. I think in the UK, you can't be within 500 feet of property.
Well, there you go. What we have to do is change the manned aviation rules, and we've solved the problem. Why should we have all the burden of rules? What about slipping it back onto the manned aviation community?
Yeah, there needs to be changes in airspace, you know. And I've seen, if you actually look at the Queen's speech, so the government, so Boris put out in the Queen's speech, there are going to be powers to force changes in airspace. So this is something that's coming through from the highest levels of government. This is happening. Electronic conspicuity is going to be a thing. I still haven't seen very much innovation in the field of electronic conspicuity. The only thing I've seen is Pilot Aware or whatever it's called. But I think that's if I was one of these VC investors, I would be plowing money into that company left, right, and center, because that for me could be a huge breakthrough technology. Like that could be worth, you know, tens and hundreds. Yeah, that could be worth tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, that's where I'd be putting my money if I was a VC investor, because I think that kind of technology is what is the future of drones and manned aircraft. Is you need some kind of system, electronic conspicuity system, which can merge all of the existing technology together, but then replace it with its own protocol, which is set for the 21st century. Once you've got that, yeah, you're in the money. Oh, I seem to have bored all three of you, I think.
No, I am listening, James. I am listening, James. You know, I agree.
I'm ready, Ian.
We have it.
Plug the battery in, mate. We'll see what range we've got.
I've just realised something, and I was going to try and do something, but I can't.
Hold on, it's beyond visual.
James, I was listening to James all the way through. I was listening 100%, James, and I agree with you.
Ian, switch on the drone and see if you can control it.
I've just realised I've never flown a drone on this show. That's what I've just realised. I've sat here thought we've talked about them every week, but I've never flown a drone on this show.
Well, I've got because it's hot, and behind me, as you were talking, a really nasty bug has landed. Will do me some harm if it bites me. So I have a finely honed machine here, tool, to dispatch it and send it on. So that's why I'm worried, because something huge landed just there, and I'm going to shut the window now.
No, I was listening, James. It was just running at the same time through my heads as I was doing it.
It's fine.
No,
it's fine.
You are right. You are right.
It takes a lot to defend me. I think I've just had an idea for one of your upcoming shows, Gary. I think what we need to do is go and get one of you with a drone in your room and another one the other side of the planet, controlling it over the internet. You can do that. You can do that.
You can do it with RGPilot. It's very easy. Tridge flew. They flew New Zealand, Australia. It's doable, but I just don't want to get stunned at the moment.
Is this room too small to fly an Inspiring?
Go on then.
It's probably not a good idea.
But on auto gyro up there.
The electronic conspicuity thing.
Gary, have you got an auto gyro on top of your shelves?
I have, because I like auto gyros. I like the way that they're crazy to fly, and you've got to be on top of them. I would like to have I've never flown a twin like the V-copter. I've never flown a V type of gyro. Maybe better.
Auto gyros are just a way of automating death.
They are in the manned. I'd never fly a manned one. Never, ever,
No,
ever,
they are
ever.
lethal machines. There's so many deaths in this country from auto gyros. It's amazing.
Yeah. They're proper great top way of ending your time.
I met Ken Wallace, and I don't know if you know Ken Wallace, but he was an avid auto gyro fanatic. He was one of the fathers of the auto gyro, I would say. But he when I met him, he told us all of his scary stories about how he almost killed himself. So I quite believe that they're pretty dangerous things from some of the stories he told me about going vertically and then going vertically the opposite way shortly afterwards at an air show. And they sound pretty scary things. Problem is they kind of only work if you're going forwards. The rotors stop working if you're not going forwards. So
That's the problem. They have a flight envelope. Most fixed wing aircraft, they have a flight envelope. If you exceed the flight envelope, you can recover back into controlled flight. With an auto gyro, if you exit the stable flight envelope, that's it. You basically might as well take a spade and bury yourself, because there's no recovery. If those rotors slow down too much, the game's over, and that's the problem. But they're pitched as being super safe. You can't stall them, but stalling is not the only risk.
A bit of negative G and mass bumping. You can take the tail up. Well, not it really matters, but it doesn't do the blades any good if you knock that off. And then if you pitch forward, you unload the disc, it slows down. No, it's great. And I can't remember now which way is the worst way to turn. Turning left is better than turning right. I can't remember. There's a whole load of things to go remember. So they're nice to fly. They're good fun. But I would never go in a manned one. Never, ever, 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 ever.
The interesting thing, though, is in America, you don't need a license to fly one if it's under 250 pounds or something. But you do need a license to fly a scale model of it if it's over 250 grams.
Yeah.
So you need to register anyway. It's crazy. You can't have a scale model of something without registering it, but the original doesn't have to be registered. Stupid.
But they have the same fate as the Flying Flea, the Paul de Sail or whatever that was. That was a horrible aircraft in certain ways, perfectly flyable, but you had to be very, very careful. And the plans were everywhere, like the Pop Mechanics weren't there or whatever. The plans were everywhere, and people built them in their
Right,
sheds.
look, we've got a stripper amongst us. I thought it was going to be Ian was going to get down to his undies, but no, it's James.
Go, James, go!
Yeah, we'll have a strip off. Come on.
Back to electronic conspicuity, just briefly. You're absolutely right about bringing it all together and the single systems, and that is why 2 UTMs have bought radio companies or manufacturers of radio chipsets to create electronic conspicuity devices. But it's not going well at the moment.
as far as I'm aware, isn't Pilot Aware like one guy in his shed?
It is, and I've been speaking to him for Rwanda coming up in February, and he's a very nice chap. And it started from safety. It's a good sort of, as you say, in a shed safety aware thing. And it's a good idea, and it does. And with 360 radar in the UK, it pulls in ADS-B, MODES traffic, FLARM. What's the other thing? Open Glider Network, and there's another one. There's 5 or 6 things that pull. And not only does it, so it pulls that in, and so you can see it in the cockpit, but it retransmits the stuff. So it becomes it becomes a unified picture of all those things. and that's what's very cool. Is the retransmitting part of it, and it's it's grand. And
Well, if any VC investors are listening, if you want 100x on your money, stick your money into that, because that's, I think, or you could just like invest it in another UAM company with 22 rotors and 57 moving parts, or you could actually invest it in Pilot Aware and get some money back. I think it's a brilliant project, and I'd love to get involved with it if I had some time, but it's I think that's what we need. We need to like join it all together. ADS-B, FLARM, MODES.
Well, it's an interesting thing is that paragliding and glider drivers are kind of leading the way in this, really, because they've got low cost solutions that work and that are technically better than ADS-B, which is ridiculous. And that what they're doing should be seen. And it's the general aviation community is jumping on board with that. In the UK, some Air Force jets are equipped with FLARM as well, because they do a lot of flying in Yorkshire, and there's several gliding clubs up there. It's not, none of this is hard. I mean, look, here we are. There we are. There's one particular type of transmitter that'll do it. Oh, here's another. How many different sites have I got here? I think I've got 3 here. So I can create a FLARM setup in 10 minutes. It's ridiculous. It's a rant over. Hang on, there's one with the GPS. Here we are. That's your whole thing with the battery. So when you go gliding, you now have conspicuity. It's not hard. If I can do it, it can't be. Right now.
Well, we'll put it this way: in the UK, regulations are changing. We've seen the consultations. Consultations come out. They, I think, about 3 months ago, published a report. The CAA then stood up in Share the Air and basically said, this is happening. We are going to mandate electronic conspicuity. It's going to happen. This wasn't it might happen. It is going to happen. They didn't give a time scale on how long it's going to take. But when that happens, like, people are going to be looking at solutions, and what if you were a drone manufacturer and you were going to integrate some kind of device onto your drone, what would you pick? ADS-B in or Pilot Aware? Well, for me, Pilot Aware ticks more boxes than ADS-B in. So why would you go down that route? You know, it seems like it's the best option on the market at the moment. So, you know, why not go down that route? So I think the guy. I promise you, the guy's not paying me. So I'm not like some shill for his company. But yeah, I'm completely behind the project, and I think it's the missing piece of the puzzle. And once we've got that, then we are going to be buzzing, so to speak.
It's Keith Vining. Keith is the person that's running that. Keith Vining, yeah.
Bruce has got one flying.
Look, I'll tell you why it's not happening and people are jumping on, because it's a very typical UK shed-based innovation based around safety. That's why the world's not going mad for it, because it's common sense. Again, I don't work for him either. It's common sense, and it works, and it's straightforward, and it's low cost. I mean, all those things that, again, our VC company, we're not going to make millions out of this. Common sense works. No, it's great. It is a good system, and
it's because we've got no funky animations or, like, you know, 3D renderings. If he had a 3D rendering, I bet you he would like 10x his company's value within the space of like a week. You just need a funky 3D rendering, you know, a flashy website, do a couple of launch events.
Say you use blockchain and Bruce chain, and then you'll be there.
Yeah,
it's blockchain based, Pilot Aware. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a good system. But others are. Intel had the system, didn't they? They had a system they were trying to get together. They've stopped making the Falcon 8, haven't they?
Yes.
The Falcon 8, not the 8 Plus though.
Oh, okay.
I've heard the whole thing's going.
Really?
That's what I think as well.
Well, to be honest, I think they looked at it and they didn't see. I don't think they saw the bigger picture. They kind of saw they saw the drone light shows and were like, okay, we're making like God knows how much money on each drone light show that they're doing. We're making more money from this. Let's concentrate on that. They're putting in a fraction of the effort for like 10 times the gain. So I guess from a financial perspective, it seems like the way to go. But I think, the whole point of them getting into Ascending Technologies was that they wanted a stake in the market. So it would seem crazy that they wouldn't continue it and develop it further. I think they just cocked up the F8 Plus a bit. They didn't really bring it any further forward. They kind of, some things were better, some things were worse. So all in all, it wasn't really much of there wasn't really much change between the two versions, apart from putting the Intel logo on things. Which, fair enough, they're Intel, but I don't know. I was a bit disappointed with the F8 Plus, to be honest.
Intel aren't interested in making drones. They're interested in IP and technology. Just they want their chips behind it. They want, if you look at Intel's business isn't making PC hardware overall. It's making the CPU. It's making the motherboard chipset. And I think for the drone, I think they got into it because they wanted to lay the groundwork in place, just like Qualcomm did. Qualcomm have done exactly the same. That they put a huge amount of money in behind you. Who was it? Intel put a chunk of money behind Unique. Qualcomm put it in behind. Who did Qualcomm put it behind? Oh no, it wasn't anyone specific, was it? It was just into chips for ready to go. But all of these companies are looking. They want to be supplying all of the onboard tech. I think Intel just used it as a dev platform. I think it was a drone project stroke dev platform and nothing more. And it's come to an end.
I can't remember the name of the CAO at the time, but he was very much the champion for it all. Yeah. And then he left under a cloud. And and with the cloud, so left the drones.
Look at Microsoft. Look how many times Microsoft have moved in and out of the hardware industry. 1 minute Microsoft a software company, next minute they're a hardware company. The only thing with Microsoft that's always remained the stable bit of hardware is the Xbox line. Every now and again Microsoft go, yeah, we're going to build PCs, we're going to build tablets, we're going to build phones. They bought Motorola and look where that ended up. It's the same with these big companies. They flop. Every CEO comes in, plows a ton of money into something, and then the next CEO walks in and goes, bin that, get rid of that, don't like that, and move on. And it's every 3 to 4 years. Nothing like this will ever last in a company like that.
No, that would never happen at Boeing. They'd never kick out a CEO after a flop.
No. What time is it? Hang on a minute. That's what was that? That rocket was a timing failure, wasn't it?
What?
No,
I'm talking about the Max 737, Max 8. That's probably, and then the rocket thing as well. It's all accumulated, isn't it? So someone's
Come on, Bruce. It was a small problem. You're just blowing it out of proportion.
Of little impact.
Yeah, look, they had a little issue. Yes, they knew about it, but hey,
it'll be fixed in the next software update, just like your chair.
Just
but you.
Oh, we're in trouble. Now we're in trouble. Merry Christmas to you, Patrick. And how's your back? What did you do?
I don't want to get into that Christmas sob story, but it was exciting. It was fun. But anyway, did you cover the letter from the Senate? And
No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
You have to share that with our audience.
I suppose I could. I just don't know where it is. You mean the one that mentions my name?
Yes, that one, and the SUAS News, and that they sent to Secretary Chow.
Yeah. I know.
Handy, huh?
I'm just looking for it. You sent it to me, didn't you?
I think there was some deal about not drinking and posting or something, wasn't there?
Yeah, must have been. Oh, look, I'm halfway. I think I have got a glass of water. I'm halfway down this. All the finest alcohol in Kenya. In fact, let's look at that. In Kenya at Christmas time, They
Candy
have.
for Christmas. Is there any
Let's
snow?
see. Let me see. Yeah, there will be. There will be up on Kilimanjaro. Let's see how many people have been killed by the Kumi Kumi this year.
Weird folks.
Yeah, no, they have a beer that's very much like this, and it's very illegal. And you're driving along, you'll see bottles sticking out the ground, buried, and that's what it is. Where's the latest one? Done, killed. 2005, more than 45 people. But how many this year? Yeah, so they brew it up for Christmas, and it just kills people. just dead. I'm looking for that thing. I'm looking for that post. I distracted myself. So we'll unpack the story while I find the thing, Patrick.
Well, yeah, it's kind of an interesting set of events. You know, people have been asking me here in the United States about DJI getting banned, and one for law enforcement, and also, let's say, government work, that they would no longer use DJI. And I kind of, people have been asking me, well, what do you think? And I say, well, it might cause a controversy like it did with Huawei, the cell phone manufacturer. And when that story broke, people were trying to say that Donald Trump was anti-Chinese and there were other issues, and they seemed to gloss right over the, let's say, spying or data leakage or whatever. So kind of the same thing with DJI. People have been asking me, it can be controversial to ban DJI, and I don't know if they'll do that. But then this letter came out, and then also the DOA, or what was the Defense of America Act thing that we also put up on SUS News last week. A lot of people had not seen that. So that was from last June. But I will say that people in government circles, the DJI ban is actually growing legs. And that's what this letter here pertains to. And there it is, site number one. Not site number two, but site number one is everyone's favorite drone stuff this week. Host, none other. We really need a drum roll. Bruce. Got any drum rolls over there?
Cheese rolls. He was talking about cheese rolls earlier, or cheese
filled rolls. Yeah.
Filled roll.
The question I've got there, Patrick, is with this whole sort of like DJI thing, like how much of this do you think is the made in America kind of scenario, and how much of it do you think is actually real?
Well, multiple sources have said that there's data leakage. I mean, I guess you can pare things down to, like my phone's in airplane mode and I'm not connected to the network, yada, yada, yada. But let's say the Chinese, from what I've talked to people, and this isn't just DJI, but the Chinese have become very adept at getting data. The components will, look for Wi-Fi after so many hours of use and stuff like that. You could go down the rabbit hole on this deal. As far as the Made in America thing is concerned, people woke up one day. I think we've been kind of beating the drum about the monopoly and the bad thing about what monopolies are a bad thing. People woke up one day and realized that there was a monopoly. And I talked to another big defense contractor yesterday, and they're kind of like, well, we've been talking about it, but, they're just no beating the DJI, and it's great stuff. The price point's great. We're making lots of money. So we're going to continue what we're doing. And I said, well, another story we did here is the funding that DJI got from the PRC. I mean, basically, if you're doing business with DJI, you're doing business with PRC. And I don't know that that's a bad thing, but it is bad if you have concerns about security. And I think that we're starting. One thing I will say, another political thing, and I know I'm kind of going on a rant, Rudolph, but I think one thing that the trade war and the tariff thing did here in the United States was wake people up to what's going on with China. Would you agree with that in the rest of the world, or?
This is funny because I have a very different view. Because it's interesting. Me and James are at the different side of the pond to this, and I don't know how James's interpretation is. Because, okay, if we talk about monopoly, 90%, if not more, of the world's computers run off US software, Microsoft. So if we're going to talk about monopoly, you know, China having a monopoly, US having a monopoly, the UK having a monopoly, it depends where you look. It's the industry. It depends what it is. It depends where you look at it. You know, we can look at drones and say it's China. We can look at personal computers. We can say it's Microsoft, which is US, and Apple. You know, if we combine the two, which are the two largest in the world, you know, they come out of the US. I don't buy US is good and China's bad from a British point of view. Do you know what I mean? You know, like, you know, splitting it down the very simple of,
Right,
do
well,
I think one
I
is...
disagree with that. On one hand, you have, you know, communist Chinese, and then you have the good old US of A.
It's different for me to look at it this way, because I can sit there and go, I don't trust either side, frankly, with data. You know, whether it be US or, you know, I've always said data is entirely in my control. You know, it's at the end of the day, if I'm concerned about my data, then I secure it in my own ways. And I do get what you mean, actually, about the devices looking for data afterwards. You know, that's a different animal, as you say. There's other precautions you've got to do to that. But it's quite funny for me because I just look at this very differently. For me, it's a bit like standing in the schoolyard and watching the two big boys fight. That's how it looks from my point of view.
Well, I definitely, you know, I think we've taken for granted that our privacy is like, you know, that's right out the window. If you carry a cell phone, if you use a computer, all the rest of this Patriot Act, all the rest of this stuff, I would agree with that. You know, even the DJI thing, you know, I mean, I'm not anti-DJI. The only anti I am is the anti-policy team here in the United States. Oh, my God. So I know this is a family program, so I have to clean it up and I have to think about a better word. But, you know, I call their policy guy here Uncle Rico, you know, after I watched that video of the UK Parliament. I mean, you know, that was like the UK version of So You Think You Can Dance, you know. And it wasn't even that good. I mean, I don't know how anybody with a straight face could sit. I mean, I guess, you know, he's got a good job or he's bringing down, you know.
I think for me, that I'm very much like a free market kind of person. So I've got no problem with DJI doing what they're doing. I think the problem, when you look at any problems in the world, it always stems from government. So it's not DJI's fault. It's the fact that DJI are able to lobby government to change rules and regulations in a way that helps them. That's where the problem comes from, and that problem is basically a problem from government, because government are the ones who have the power to be able to change that. So I think, you know, I don't have a problem with the monopoly in that sense, because as long as they're still offering more competitive products, then other, you know, as long as there's no barriers in place to allow smaller companies to be able to compete
there's a huge barrier, and it's a $1.6 billion investment. And so, you know, people talk about Skydio, and I know you guys were talking about Skydio earlier. I've seen it fly. You know, I did get the we got software, you know. I don't trust that anymore. But look, so Skydio's got a good product. Even if they have a good product, when you're talking about that type of investment, you know, a $1.6 billion investment, plus it's still going on with the Chinese there, I just don't see, there is no free market. There's no free market there. And even would-be competitors in the United States say there's no way they're going to invest that kind of money to try and beat DJI. So if you've been to China like I have, even the other manufacturers are just like, you can't even compete on price point. And they're all in the same ecosystem.
Yeah, that's missing.
But isn't the reason why you wouldn't invest to try and compete against them because they're actually doing quite a good job of what they're already doing? The point is, if they weren't doing a good job, then there would be a case to compete against them and provide that investment. So
I've heard that hogwash too, and we could look at 3D robotics, and some people know, the backstory on 3D robotics, but 3D robotics, I think the management there was its own worst enemy. But also at the same time that they had $145 million of investment and not really $145 million of cold hard cash in their hands, they had markets that they couldn't sell to, which there was really no legal commercial market here. And they had ITAR, which they did get, cited for. And luckily they had friends in the White House, or they could have been in some serious doo-doo. So it's a little bit of a different model, So even Parrot, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars or lost over there. And Chris Anderson likes to do the shoot crowd deal. But you're talking about, 100 million, 1.6 billion. I mean, it's not even on the same scale.
No, why is no one willing to put that money in? Because that's the part I find interesting. We've all benefited from low cost China equipment. Okay, laptops, phones, everything's been over there for the last 20 years. Every laptop that anyone buys, doesn't matter if it's HP, Dell. We've all benefited from the mass manufacturing out of China. Yet we have an industry where no one seems to be willing to put the money in the US, which is interesting, isn't it?
Well, let's talk about this, because I think this is a good subject. One, the VC model for hardware in the United States is broken. Everything is more of a software as a service type of model in Silicon Valley. Nobody wants to invest in hardware. They want to invest in something that's scalable, that's cheap, that you can stuff some kids into a room, slide pizzas under the door, scale, and make some money.
Do you think that's because obviously the IT industry has been so big in Silicon Valley that hardware all become a level playing field in the IT computer industry? Let's be honest. It's a flat part, and everyone builds their competitive edge on top of the existing hardware model. And do you think that's because of that? They're 20 years too late almost, aren't they? Apple was doing the hardware in the 70s. Microsoft didn't.
There's other things that we have though with the communist regime. A good example would be Alta devices. Everybody aware of Alta devices? They make the wafer thin solar panels.
Yeah.
Okay, so they actually, everybody's complaining, oh, that's really expensive. These panels, they're very efficient. The Chinese bought them out anyway because they wanted the tech. But anyway. They actually had a facility where they were manufacturing them in Sunnyvale, California. That is one of the reasons they're so expensive. Silicon Valley started out, there would be no Silicon Valley without the military industrial complex. Even Woz himself, his dad worked for one of the missile manufacturers, and dad, got him some factory BLEM transistors. And I know other people that were in that homebrew computer club. The guys got the computer in the briefcase that they built and all the rest of it. Well, that just wouldn't have been possible without the military complex. That is pretty much gone. So to manufacture in California, the laws for emissions, EPA, environmental, and then the labor laws and all the rest of this stuff, if you want to manufacture anything in California, you have to be nuts. It's just too expensive. And I'm sure it's like that in most of the Western countries. So you go to China where, there are no environmental laws. There's no IP laws. There's no labor laws. Even the people that work at Foxconn, if there's overtime offered, you have to take it. There's no, I need Sunday off because I'm going to go play tennis or whatever. You take it. And that's just how they roll. Now, imagine trying that in England or New Zealand. And I'm just going to dump my waste out the back here. It's just not going to fly. And even as we talk about this hardware thing, so there was another guy in New Zealand, and I think this is a good thing. And he was a MP, and he made a helicopter. And this is back in the mid-2000s. He wanted to do rescue with the helicopter, and the New Zealand government, they wound up throwing the dude in jail because they said, well, this could be, this is a dual technology. You can weaponize this UAV, and it could be a weapon, and so you can't export it. So how many autonomous rescue helicopters you think they'd sell in, New Zealand? Not many. There's only a few buyers. But you would drink your Dragon Stout. So what's happening here in the United States is you have the government now. They have this thing where they're like, we got our trusted VCs, and we're going to give companies $100,000 or up to $500,000 to develop domestic drones. Okay,
That's pennies.
And in California, $100,000 is probably going to about cover the salary of someone who's going to do all of the accounting, so you don't wind up in Lebanon.
Yeah.
$500,000, you could probably rent a place, put the benches in there, and get it together. But it's ridiculous. It's such a low amount of money. And people say, okay, well, what do you think we could do? And I said, what you would have to do, I did an interview with Politico. I guess it was too dark because he didn't print any of this. But I said, really, what the government needs to do is invest about $5 billion into an ecosystem like the Chinese government did. And what the Chinese government does is they look for a winner and they go, oh, hey, here's a winner, and we'll invest more money in them. And then they can go out. I mean, this is no secret. The only thing that's secret about this is the Western world has been buying cheap products for so long that that's what we're used to, but nobody really understood what the downside of that was. So here in the United States, someone went to this trusted VC meeting and they said, you need more money. And they said, well, how much? He said $1 billion, because people are afraid to talk about numbers. And, I go, let me guess. They started laughing. The eyebrows went up. People were chuckling. Yep, they just didn't like it. So, that's going to be
a couple of thoughts on that, Patrick. There's a couple of thoughts there. Sort of like, I think the whole idea of like governments picking winners, I think for me, completely conflicts with my whole ideology on innovation and trying to create value. Because I think the true innovators are individuals. If you look at the biggest innovations that have happened, so Chris Anderson, for example, he started developing DIY drones by himself, I think, with his kids, from what I remember.
That story is totally fabricated. The do-it-yourself drones and the Chris Anderson story that you heard is that's a fanciful fabrication. But anyway, go ahead. We're innovators.
But I think there's the idea that a government gets to pick the winner and needs the government should be the one that creates the wealth in a country. I don't like the idea of that. I think that kind of conflicts with some of my internal views. I kind of
are you in the room here, or what? Are you do you read Ayn Rand?
Sorry,
I said, do you read Ayn Rand? But I was just
no. But I kind of think that there should be mechanisms in place from government to sort of spur on innovation, in the early stages to get you from idea to working prototype or something like that. Like that I kind of think is a good idea. But I think the free market is generally better than picking winners than governments are. Like from you only have to look at the drone registration system in the UK to understand the performance of governments when it comes to trying to solve problems. It tends to be slow. It tends to be expensive. It doesn't tend to end up being the right solution. If you've got some options on the table, then the market will pick the winner. I kind of like that idea. So I suppose that's the first one. I think the second point there as well, though, is we actually want to be manufacturing things in the West. Because
I like jobs. I like a tax base. I like people to have homes. This is happening in California. I think we're on the cutting edge of this concept that you're talking about. Okay, so yes, we don't have manufacturing and the environment is protected and all the rest of that, but we just offshore that. We keep putting in these labor laws. You gotta pay. It's ridiculous. I've got a corporation in California, and I could not afford employees. So what's happening is with the gig economy, good jobs in California are $12 an hour gigs. Okay, so I don't know where you guys all live, but $12 an hour. I mean, you can't even. It's buys a pack of cigarettes, you know, or a sandwich. You go to San Francisco and you go to lunch, man, it's $20, you know, and that's without a drink. So.
Yeah.
And you
But
have,
I think the thing is when it comes to manufacturing, like you know, it seems like the holy grail that we should be manufacturing this stuff ourselves. But at the same time, you look at the conditions for workers in China who are actually creating these products, and they're probably getting paid $2 or $3 an hour, working 12-hour days. Not with a particularly high standard of living. And you look at the pollution that all of that manufacturing causes. I personally think that actually, the fact that we're not manufacturing in these countries is probably a testament to the success of our countries, or maybe our past success. Whether that's any kind of dictation on our future success, I don't know. But really, where the big money is in software. And services, like from my perspective, because they can be exported worldwide much easier and generally tend to have better margins. Software is a fantastic thing to be able to do because it's much more easily scalable. Look at drone companies, around Europe, like Intel, look like they're fizzling out, or the Falcon is sort of fizzling out.
can you say that?
You look at Parrot and EB, they're kind of venturing towards the software side. You look at 3DR, they're venturing towards the software side, and so that the market's kind of dictating where they're going. And I kind of take notice of that and kind of think, well, isn't the market trying to tell us something?
The market is trying to tell us something, and the universe is trying to tell us something too. And you make good points. On the surface, it all sounds really good, right? But I got a call from one of the drone guys over at Intel a couple of weeks ago. Oh man, you were right. This monopoly, we're kind of stuck. What do we do? I mean, he did throw in that I was a troll. I write hit pieces on the internet. Thanks for the compliments, but the situation is if you have a monopoly, which we're moving into now, and I talk about a cabal, and some people laugh it off. It's the cabal, but what happens with I've talked to people that let's say do the SDK with DJI, and that are you smoking over there? Don't you know that's bad for the environment? Oh, he's vaping. Okay. Anyway, the thing is with that is and I lost my train of thought. Oh, anyway, yeah, no, the monopoly. What's happening is you're in this cabal, right, and you're working with your software. And I hear from so many people over here. Well, we're a good 2 years ahead of the Chinese.
No, they're not. No way is anyone saying that over there. Still, come on.
Oh no, we still have.
No way.
Yes, we're still ahead of the Chinese. However, I'm going to say that I talked to one drone mapping software. I don't even know if they call themselves mapping software anymore. And I go, well, what do you think of the DJI Terra? Well, you can't buy it. That doesn't sound like a good business, plan to me. We're just waiting for that to drop. Same deal with Lance. DJI is a Lance service provider. They could write the software for this. I mean, everybody talks about how good DJI is, and I mean, their controller, their software, their drone software, it kicks butt, right? So when DJI launches their Lance program or software, and it has the geofence kicks in, and I can get the geofence taken off, and I mean, why would you use anyone else's Lance? And as a side note, turns out that this whole Lance thing has security issues. Like some other malcontent was sending and asking the FAA, and the guy over there at the UASIO is in trouble. He's in the hot seat. So there are some issues. So this is what I'm going to say. So you have the monopoly. Here's Intel. We talked about these American companies that have monopolies. Unique pulled up stakes. We're out. Nobody knows what happened to the $60 to $100 million that they gave Unique. They're gone. And now all they have is that German company thing that they bought, which is sitting on shelves all across America, depreciating because it's not very bueno, as the kids like to say. So What we have is we have an ecosystem that really only has one manufacturer in it, and everybody thinks, well, that's okay, it's good. I'm gonna ride that. Even the people at this other DoD vendor that make products for DJI, you know, I asked them. I said, now if they get banned, what are you going to do? That investment? Well, yeah, that might be bad. But as it is now, it's really good. We're making a lot of money. So we'll just have to see what happens. None of that sounds like, let's say, a global business plan or a business model that makes sense. Is we're going to just count on what one company does. And again, the regulatory side of this, I don't know how it goes in the countries that you guys are living in, but DJI is lobbying the American government, the FCC, Commerce, and the FAA. They're spending a lot of money. And kind of what I'm seeing is I'm seeing some regulation that is going to favor a certain company, like we have here with the ID and tracking. If DJI gets the ID and tracking, you know, I don't see anybody competing with that. So I think monopolies in the end are bad. And I don't think that the drone monopoly is good. Yes, you have nice cheap drones. We could take pretty pictures, but I don't think in the long run that's going to be good for us. The other thing I think is I think people are also starting to realize that the quadcopter is not the end all be all for drones.
Okay, quick quiz for you, and you don't read the top bar, but which city is this?
Which city is what?
Which city is this? Can you see the picture?
No.
Oh.
No, go do it again. I'll add it. I've got to add it.
Gary's going to give you permission, James.
Do it again. Do it again.
Sorry, Rudolph.
See, this seemed very communist.
We'll call it Chairman Gary.
Oh yeah,
It's-
definitely.
It's weird. It's weird for me, this whole thing. You know, if I look at security, I assume everyone's spying. The US, China, the British. Look, we wrote the rule book on spying. We handed out Enigma at the end of the war and said to all the allies, oh, yes, machine's fantastic. You have this. Don't worry, no one's hacked it. We're not listening to anything you say at all. Probably. You know, we wrote the rule book on this stuff. So, you know, from my point of view, I assume everyone's listening, whether it be UK, British, US, China. You know, I don't buy anyone's. I don't buy this good and bad spying. I just buy they all do it. Some a little less obvious than others. It's weird because from the communist thing, in some ways, I think I'd have taken communism after spending the last year trying to get through Brexit. We finally got through it. But I think if we'd have had a communist state, we might have got through it a bit smoother, to be honest. So at the moment, it's almost looking like a benefit, not a downside. I think having a monopoly in any industry isn't good. Okay. Does it stifle innovation? I don't agree with that bit because it hasn't in the PC industry. It hasn't in all of the other industries. What it creates is a lack of diversity more than anything, not stifling innovation, but a lack of options of doing things a bit differently. And, you know, DJI are the gorilla in the room. That's the term to use in the drone industry. But these things are generally short-lived. Let's be honest. You know, if we look at phones, Nokia was the biggest phone company in the world. Who'd have ever thought Nokia would become a toy brand, you know, of what they are? So what today is the biggest in the world, tomorrow won't be. I find the whole thing quite amusing, to be honest, on the outside. You know, the US is clearly, you know, I think you guys are trying to, you got Skydio now, who is a massive opportunity, the biggest opportunity in the drone industry there's been for 20 years, period. You know, in this, DJI have crept up, Skydio have delivered something different to everyone else. And I think as long as they can stay for 2 years, they'll stay. The people want the product looks good. They've just got to be able to get them into people's hands. That's literally their biggest problem right now.
Where are they manufactured?
But but that's the world. I think it's hypocritical for us to sit here and say China's bad when every single product around me, including the laptop I'm talking to you on this on, is made in China. And we've all benefited from that. If we're going to sit there and flag the pole for I want everything made in Britain, we've had the same things for years, whether it be white goods, whether it be things. If you're going to sit that, you may as well live in a cardboard box in a street. We've all benefited from cheap product made abroad. We've all raised we've all looked the other way when it suited us, that there were young people making them, or there were kids in sweatshops, whether it be clothes. Look, 90% of the high street clothing is made in terrible situations all over the world, not even China. Clothing does that thing where it moves every few years, and technology will be the same. I think if we're going to we can't pick and choose how we accept what's right and what's wrong. Is probably my point, if you see what I'm trying to say. We either have to say I'm not using anything, I'm not going to accept anything, or we have to accept that the way globalization works is, as a civilization goes up the scale, you tend to move more away from the legwork and more towards the software or the heavier and the more experienced side of industry. We've got it in the UK with Formula One. Britain doesn't make anything anymore. People say, well, actually we do. Britain is the home of Formula One. We just do the high-end stuff now. We don't make the clothing. We don't have the mills. We don't have the sweatshops. Does that mean it's gone away? No, but it moves on to the next economy. And it will move from China. China's where it is today, 20 years, it will be somewhere else as well.
All I would say there is, you've got a choice. If we want to manufacture stuff in the West, then we can do that, but we have to get rid of the minimum wage. So you either need to pick minimum wage or you need to pick manufacturing. Because I can't. Yeah. I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to be able to compete with the Chinese when they are paying, when essentially they're paying people peanuts to create these products.
Automation, robots. I mean, actually, you're right. You've got to play to your strengths. Any business has to play to its strengths. I'm sure that if I was in business and I was making something electronic, it involved a plastic part, I wouldn't try to become the company that made the injection molding. I'd outsource that to a company that was best equipped to do that. And it's the same with any business. If you're making electronic systems, including software and hardware, get the hardware made in China because it's the cheapest, best place to do it while you focus on the software. If you try and do stuff you're not good at, you'll never be economically competitive with other people in the marketplace. So what we've done in the West is we've said, well, the Chinese are able to make this stuff really cheap. We'll just get them to make that. We'll do the high IP value stuff, the software and so forth. But this is going to change as you said. It's going to move from country to country. But the thing that's going to put a spanner in that machine is automation. Once we have the artificial intelligence and the robotics capable of replacing workers at all levels, it won't matter who's got the lowest wage. It's just all it's going to matter is who's got the lowest price of production. And people at the moment are cheaper than machines, but that's going to change. Machines will be cheaper than people. You don't have people on vehicle assembly lines anymore. It's all robots because that saves money. So once we get down to other industries, pretty soon China will be no economic advantage over Western countries. And I think that's when we're going to see some major changes.
Well, and whatever that model you have, I don't know if global warming or climate change is big where you guys are, but here in California, we actually have a climate change tax that they collect. Doesn't go towards any projects or anything that would affect climate change, but they do collect it. But the thing is with it is hypocritical, because what we do buying these cheap goods is offshore our climate change and our pollution and our plastic in the ocean and all the rest of this stuff goes to China and India. And they create these gases. They create this pollution. They create the plastic that's in the a lot of these countries are dumping it. So a lot of the issues that we talk about and that we have to clean up or whatever, a lot of them are, let's say, the byproduct of buying cheap products made overseas. I mean, if we were manufacturing all of these components, parts, and pieces in the Western world, Western Europe or United States, you would not be able to create pollution like that. You would not be able to use slave labor. The greenhouse gases and climate change and things like that, we'd be nipping the problem right in the bud. I mean, so, even after you exploit China, who's next? Vietnam's Lining of the Chinese are totalitarian. So who's the next place we'll exploit? India?
Well, we already are in many ways. Clothing is the example. It's interesting. We don't mean to bully you on this, Patrick. It's interesting because I'm fit. I'm an idiot for the most part. Let me admit it. Like, I look at life very, very simply. Like, I'm an idiot. I look at things very simply. Everyone's watching me. They're all, I can hear voices in my head at all times. They're all watching. No, I tell you, the part I find distasteful about the whole thing, nothing, not US, but we did all this bad shit for years. And now we're sitting there saying, yeah, you're not allowed to do that. And we invented spying, we invented slave labor, we invented this crap. We did it more before anyone else on the planet. Let's be honest. Let's not hide from that fact, especially the British. Let's be honest. We went around, conquering half the planet at one point because we thought we were in charge. And so I just look at things and think, is communism bad? Yes and no. Is socialism bad? Is frankly, bloody whatever we've had in the UK for 2 years hasn't worked. So, I just don't think there's a simple good versus bad, yes versus no answer. I think everyone's got their path, and whichever one works at the time seems to be right, really. Not sure that makes sense.
Well, somebody's making some money on the deal.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm not making any money.
No, none of us. None of us make any money on any of this. That's
actually, because I'm going to bid on the concession contract at Vertiport Africa.
I'm going to outbid you on that.
Gentlemen, it really will come down to the quality of your renderings and just the amount of jargon that you can get in. I don't want 2 words about a hot dog. I want a hot dog. Oh, I was going to say he must be going for his Christmas lunch. We must go. He's gone. Has he gone for his Christmas lunch? Yeah, Christmas dinner's on the table.
We needed a video of the dinner, didn't we? We needed to see the dinner before he went. That was it.
Yeah.
Bruce, have a fantastic one.
Yes.
Amazing person.
Lovely Christmas, Bruce. We'll speak to you again. Look, we must go. It's my Christmas. Yeah. My Christmas here. It's 1:05 in the morning.
Can I just say something, Gary, before we go? I just want to thank all of you guys for the last 12 months. You, Gary, Patrick, James, Bruce especially. It's been an absolute privilege being allowed to spend some time with you. I've said it in my end of year video as well, which I put out yesterday, but I just want to wish all of you guys an absolutely fantastic Christmas. And it's been a blast. I'm privileged to have been allowed to participate in this with you guys over the last 12 months.
Right, mark him down for that. No, thank you. Thanks you, viewers, wherever you are in the world.
Let me just get the violin out.
Yeah. No, it's all right. Coming on you on a Tuesday, it's been nice to be able to talk some nonsense. Look, this industry is it's in the infancy of its birth, and we're at the beginning of what will either burn out in a ball of fire to nothing, or it will become some of the biggest things this planet has ever seen. What's right, what's wrong, who knows, but we'll get there in the end. We'll all either end up working for the US or China or, I don't know, some strange country somewhere else. It'll all go wrong somewhere along the line, for me anyway. I just...
In that long chat then was basically about DJI in China. We have to remember the Phantom came out in 2013. We're only 7 years later. SUS News predated that Phantom launch by 5 years. 2008 we started. So it's amazing. And as you said, bright shining star at the moment, but perhaps they won't make it through the next decade. No, it is. Yeah, perhaps we are at the beginning, and 2020 will be will be the start of the grown-up business properly. Who knows? Anyway, on that crazy rant, Patrick, Rudolph, Ian, thanks very much. A Merry Christmas to all of you. Dear viewers, wherever you are in the world, there are some of you are having Christmas, like me, and some of you are about to have Christmas. Have a very, very lovely day. Be safe whatever you're doing. And don't forget, register your drones. No. Anyway.
Unless they're below 250 grams without a camera.
Let's have a.
Oh, yeah. All right, guys, I'm ranting. Take care. Look after yourselves, everybody. See you again. New Year's Eve, 2100 GMT. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Big one, bye.